Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Rich Allen and Peter Rutzler. France are on the edge of their seat as they sit on the edge of qualification to the World Cup. But are they safely across the line, or are they still some big hurdles to jump? All that and more, including your questions after the latest headlines. Blaise Matuidi's early goal was enough for Les Bleus to tiptoe past Bulgaria on Saturday. The result keeps Didier Deschamps' men top of Group A ahead of their clash with Belarus, with France still needing to win to absolutely guarantee qualification to the World Cup in Russia next year. In Ligue 1 news, Nice have opened a new state-of-the-art training ground. An investment of 15.5 million euros has gone into the project, which also includes sleeping rooms for their prospects. Marseille have confirmed the permanent signing of Jordan Amavi from Aston Villa. The 23-year-old has impressed so far this season and has penned a deal until 2021. Pascal Dupraz has stripped Christophe Jullien of the Toulouse captaincy this week. A rift arose between the two since the club's 2-0 loss at Marseille. And fellow centre-back partner Issa Diop has been chosen as his replacement. And finally, the Ballon d'Or list has been revealed with a number of Ligue 1 men and players, and French players as well, joining that list. But Neymar is the one that's headlining there, as well as being in the news for asking the UEFA to banish Barcelona for an unpaid loyalty fee stemming from that transfer this summer, while the Catalan club are still counterclaiming that the 25-year-old owes them cash in return. Still a sticky one there, it seems. And that's all for the news. But remember, stay up to date with all your French football news. Head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start this week with the national side, and France just about got the result they needed on Saturday. Rich, was this more of a professional performance with that 1-0 win, or a sign that everything still isn't quite clicking for what is an exceptionally talented side?
Exceptionally talented, yes, but my goodness, they go about things in a difficult and slightly frustrating manner. I can't really call it a professional performance. They got the result. So in that regard, yes, professional. But certainly in that second half, since things really got a little too tense, I think, a little too close for comfort for Bulgaria to pull a goal back. 25 minutes, France looked pretty comfortable. I thought they had the right idea. They came out of the traps early, got that early goal, were pressing hard. It's probably no coincidence then that sort of the wheels almost fell off the wagon once N'Golo Kante went off injured late in that first half. I think it was a big night for certain players to impress. I'm looking at the likes of Lacazette being given the striker's role ahead of Giroud. Injuries obviously meant that we had Luca Dean in at left back. Obviously, the injury to Kante early on meant Rabiot perhaps came on earlier than he'd anticipated. It's to be debated whether some of those took their chances or not. I think Lacazette will probably look on his night with a little bit of disappointment. I think considering how disorganised that defence looked at times, I thought Luca Dean looked okay in parts. But perhaps that's not to be unexpected. But by and large, I mean, you can't argue with the result. It was, they needed the result first and foremost. Performance perhaps can come later. So to come away from Bulgaria, who haven't lost at home so far in these qualifiers, with the win, I suppose in that regard you can't ask for more. But you would just hope that with hopeful qualification anyway to a major tournament. But dare I say formality, that there might have been a little bit more polish to the performance.
And that's sort of the emitting feeling from a lot of these French games at the moment. But Peter, he's just mentioning briefly there, and that's Alexandre Lacazette, who did start in the striker role with Griezmann and Mbappe either side of him. Was this a chance missed for the Arsenal man to really stamp his authority in that position of the main striker where there's still plenty of competition?
Yeah, I think he'll look back on it and think it is a chance missed, mainly on the basis that he has not really been given this sort of opportunity for such a long time. I mean, Giroud is Deschamps' man, and he's been quite rigid with that, despite pressure for him to play Lacazette, who earned his place in the team by consistently scoring goals, and he would have wanted to have done better, I think. Obviously, Bulgaria is not an easy place to go. It's a very wet pitch. New setup as well, 4-3-3. But you'd think with Lacazette that would probably suit him, really, with the two wide players, Griezmann coming inside and Mbappe. But the game did seem to pass him by a little bit. I think he had one great opportunity where he was denied by a sensational tackle, which he'll look back on and think maybe I could have taken it a bit quicker. But it's difficult because he doesn't really get these opportunities, and that's the key point. And for Deschamps to make the change, he's looking at other options. The 4-3-3 epitomizes that. And he'll think, well, I didn't really take the chance. I think the report's saying that after the game, he went straight through the mix zone, stern face. So from his perspective, that's how he sees it. And I think on balance, he will regret, but he will think this was an opportunity for me to really stake a claim against Giroud. I mean, he's taken his place at club level. And the pressure obviously mounts with Deschamps when he's picking the backup man at the club. So I wouldn't think he'll get another start against Belarus. I think he may resort back to what he knows, Didier Deschamps. But yeah, it's definitely a chance gone, because I think a 4-3-3 would suit Lacazette and the way he plays. And France don't normally play a 4-3-3. It was new, didn't really work, seemed a bit disjointed, especially after Kante went off, as Rich was saying. So yeah, I expect changes, and Lacazette, I think, maybe one of those to miss out.
Yeah, they tweaked a couple of things in this one, really, Rich. And a number of people have mentioned in the past that it seems strange to play Griezmann out wide. It really didn't work for him in the Euros. Playing him more centrally really allowed him to blossom. Obviously, Mbappe's played more wide recently, but were they maybe a little too narrow at times? Did trying to play so many of those players that they really want to play not really come off as they would hope?
I think so. I think, as you said, Griezmann played a little more out wide, and Mbappe played out wide. Both, I think, have made it pretty clear they much prefer playing centrally. Griezmann, I think, probably has the maturity and the discipline to almost do as he's told by his coach. I'm still not sure yet whether Mbappe has that. I think we've seen that for PSG at times this season. I think we've certainly seen it at times for France, of him drifting out of position from where he is supposed to be deployed. So I think they're probably going to suffer a little bit from that. I would quite like to see, once everyone's fit, a continuation of the sort of three up front, and I'd quite like to see a sort of almost rotation, if you like, of the three of Griezmann, Mbappe, and Dembele. I think you've got those three. Any one of those three can play out wide. Certainly Griezmann and Mbappe can play centrally, and you just let them be a little bit more flexible with how they play. You'd have width there, you'd have pace there, you'd have excitement there, and you also got the quality of finishing there. That's ultimately where I would like to see this current crop of French players end up. For the here and now, though, yeah, there was a lack of depth. What really hit them and hurt them most, I thought, Saturday night, was that defence. I've heard a lot of people come out of that game saying, Varane marshalled that sort of defence quite well. I actually thought Varane had a pretty poor game. I certainly think he was outshined by Umtiti. I think he had to step in and cover Varane on a number of occasions. It may have been that Varane was pulled out to the right a little bit with some sort of obvious defensive failure, really, of his defensive duties at times. So it may be that didn't help Varane. And it emphasises the argument for a better. There's a separate argument as to whether one exists, but a better right back, someone who does have that sort of defensive know-how and defensive capability. Because Varane was pulled out far too many times, I thought, to the right, which allowed then Bulgaria to really attack that French defence. We saw the classic of Lloris. A howler recovers it with a world-class save. I'm starting to see a little bit too much of that. Great to see the world-class saves, but I'd rather not be seeing the howlers that force him into doing that. But there's food for thought from this performance. There really is, I think, for Deschamps. It's whether now Deschamps can lose that, or has enough time to lose that stubborn edge, and recognise that France have the players to play in the positions that I think he wants. It's making sure that he picks that team, making sure that favourites aren't picked, making sure form players are picked. So I think the big test now is between now and when that World Cup starts, obviously dependent on France make it, is that Deschamps himself can learn that he's got an incredibly talented squad of players at his disposal. They won't win anything if he also doesn't develop and show flexibility.
And Peter, was there any real standouts for you? I know it's maybe a little bit hard on one of those games that you sort of end up grinding out, but was there anyone that really, especially at this late stage in the final sort of competitive games before a World Cup, cement their sort of place in this starting 11?
It'd be difficult to say cement a place in the side. I think Matuidi getting on the score sheet was good for him. It reminded us of what he can bring to a side. His box-to-box dynamism, getting into the box and finding scoring positions, as well as being effective in ball recovery. He did fade in the second half, though. He was not a complete performance by him by any stretch of the imagination. Going back to Luca Dean, I think as Rich was saying, I think this is a really good opportunity for him. I mean, Mendy's out for several months with his ACL. Kurzawa's been in poor form, and he's not exactly in Deschamps' best books anyway, I'm sure. So this is a really big opportunity for him, and he did okay. I wouldn't say he did particularly well. They were not collectively that strong, France. They didn't appear to be in any case, and I think they were more interested in attacking Sidibe and the Bulgarians on their left-hand side. So, but he was part of the goal. It was a good cutback, and he didn't do anything particularly wrong. But he'll realise now this is a big opportunity for him, especially with the World Cup coming up, and he will want to secure that place. More solid performances. No reason for Deschamps to take him out the side and put pressure on Kurzawa, because he is a player who can be pressed. I think his performances for the national side haven't exactly impressed. Besides that, I think Kante, you can see how important he was. It's more a case of who underperformed, really, as Rich was saying, and especially in terms of defensively. Rabiot, when he came on, was anonymous. Tolisso did all right. I thought he did okay. Nothing spectacular. Up front, they were a bit toothless. Mbappe was trying things, but nothing really worked. Griezmann struggled. Lacazette flitted in and out. So, yeah, I wouldn't say anyone really staked a claim, but I think that from the talking points that we've covered, that a few have kept their names in the pot, but none are certainly permanent fixes.
I think I would also just I would probably say Tolisso, I thought, performed pretty well. I think, considering the sort of incredibly rough treatment he got from the Bulgarians, I think at one point, I think there was 4 yellow cards, I think, were they shown to the Bulgarians, and all 4 were for fouls on Tolisso. So he was certainly targeted last night and showed that he was made of some I keep saying last night, Saturday, and was certainly showed that he's made of tough stuff. And I think another thing was Griezmann. Performed a little bit better in attack, but I saw in the game a sort of a defensive performance I'd not really seen from him before. Perhaps that's the disadvantage of playing ahead of to track back, but I thought he really, really got stuck in. Really seemed to dig in as a sort of almost more senior player of that side now, to track back, to help out the defence. So I thought that was quite impressive, but I think it should certainly give alarm bells that, you don't want one of your best players tracking back, and you don't want one of your best attacking players being picked out because he's performed so well defensively. So hopefully Deschamps will see that and rectify it.
Yes, I knew that would be a tough question when it's been a game that was sort of muddled out a little bit. So they face Belarus tomorrow night. It's obviously a very big game. They need to at least, match Sweden's result. If they draw and Sweden win, Sweden will go through automatically through goal difference. So it's an important game and not one we can underestimate. We have to set our minds back a little bit, but they drew 0-0 in Belarus at the very start of the group. So I'm very quickly on both of you. I'll start with you, Peter. Could this still be a banana skin for them?
It has the potential to be. Especially when we can remember the Luxembourg game quite recently. So, yes, of course it does. I fully expect Sweden to win. I think the Netherlands mentally will not be in a good place, especially after Advocat's comment saying they won't win 8-0 and they go and do it. I think Sweden look confident. I think they'll do all right against the Netherlands. So the onus is definitely on France to win, but but with the squad they have, they shouldn't really be a problem. And I imagine that Deschamps will ring the changes I was saying earlier, probably go back to a 4-2-3-1. But yeah, I can't see there being any issues really for France. I mean, I think the trouble with when you travel away, it's different environments, different pitches, as we saw in Bulgaria. So they won't have that. It'll be familiar home comforts. So yeah, they should do the job. And if they don't, then it'll go down on another embarrassment from qualifying with Luxembourg.
Yeah, Rich, surely this is a nailed-on strong win. Otherwise, the knives will be out, won't they?
I think for the time being, let's just take a win. I would take another nervy, scrappy 1-0 win at this moment in time. But yeah, I mean, in the ideal world, this would be a lovely, 4-0 win, things wrapped up at half-time kind of job. But, this is France, and it seems that they never, ever, ever want to take things the easy way. So I'm fully expecting another nail-biting 90 minutes. I'm fully expecting it to be a scrappy game, one that I won't enjoy for 90 minutes, but fingers crossed, come that 90th minute, the result will be in the right way.
Absolutely. And assuming they go through, one last bit I wanted to mention on the French team. There's a great article by our very own Adam White. He's always excellent today on the balance of this team. But really important is that striker's position. And there was a discussion between Giroud, who tends to be the man that the Deschamps relies on, Lacazette, who obviously played at the weekend, Benzema, although maybe he's on the periphery, or someone else. So I just wanted to know, start with you, Rich, who would your main, assuming they play one striker, of course, who would your man be?
If they're going to play the three, I think I'd go with what I mentioned earlier, if everyone's fit as well, of Griezmann in the slightly more central role, flanked by Mbappe and Dembele. I think there's enough there to give you sort of a lot of options that you need. Pace, excitement. I mentioned earlier, finishing. Giroud. I've been a huge fan of Giroud for France. He's done a brilliant job, incredibly underrated job, I think, at times, under big pressure from the Benzema clan that keep calling for his return. And Lacazette, you can't knock Lacazette's domestic form. It's just unfortunate for him. He's never been given that run in the national side to discover that level of performance for the national side. So for me, I don't see it happening. But yeah, I'd go Griezmann with Dembele and Mbappe.
Peter?
No, there's so many things I would do, but I'm not Didier. I'm going to think from Didier Deschamps' perspective, because part of me thinks looking at Deschamps, he does play a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-4 every now and again. So I think Lamar on the left-hand side, I think he was excellent against the Netherlands, and I think that will keep him very much at the forefront of Deschamps' thoughts when he's back and fit and firing. It'd be interesting to see if he would consider potentially an Mbappe and Griezmann up top together. Griezmann does like to drop into that sort of 9.5 role. Mbappe wants to try centrally. He will sort of drift out left, so that does leave some space. But then ideally you'd want Dembele or someone on the right-hand side, but with Sidibe behind him, it was almost be suicidal, and you'll have him having to think defensively more than you would probably like. I do agree with Rich on a 4-3-3 with extreme fluidity. You know, that when you've got players of this talent, you can't really tie them to tactical plans in the way that you would normally. Mbappe, Dembele, Griezmann, they want to drift, they want to find spaces, they are space invaders, you know, and they exploit it, and that's where they get their success. I think for tomorrow, I think Deschamps will go with Giroud. I think that's his go-to, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes back to Giroud, Griezmann as an axis longer term, as a focus. Unless, of course, Giroud can't get game time, and then the pressure is back on to play someone else. But yeah, I think it would have been nice to have seen Lacazette get a run of games, and he might do in the friendlies in the next few months, in the build-up to the tournament, should France get there, which I fully expect them to. But you know, it hasn't had those opportunities, and you know, I don't think they're going to be forthcoming, especially with the attacking options that France have.
Yeah, I agree with the fluidity one of Griezmann up top, with Mbappe and Dembele. I think I'm not going to try and besmirch Deschamps more than I probably already am as I'm saying it, but a more tactically diverse manager would spot that there's so many great attacking talents that if you play those three, saying they're probably your most gifted three, if you're playing a certain opponent, you've got so many great options. Giroud can come on. He's a big presence. Defender's nightmare. If you're struggling in a game and the plan A is not working, he's a great plan B. He's a great breaker down of play against the maybe some of the smaller teams as well, if you needed to give someone a rest. Lacazette is a great option that's similar to Griezmann, similar to any of the wide players, really. Lamar maybe gives you a bit more width if you wanted to play a bit more of a traditional wide man. Then you've got Martial if you wanted more someone who's a little bit more like Mbappe, a bit more direct, a bit more of a 9.5 sort of style of player. They've got great options. You can add even Tovan into that. You can add Payet into that, possibly, depending on who comes in. Fekir as well. Then you can switch to 4-2-3-1 if you need to. If you need to grab a goal, get an extra player in that attacking area. He's got a lot of options. It just seems like sometimes he's too stuck in a certain way, when this team could be a lot more fluid and a lot more interesting that sometimes he allows them to be. But that's maybe another question for another day, especially in the build-up to the World Cup when we see it. But let's move on to looking back at Ligue 1, and as we always like to do in Get French Football, we like to look at the relegation scrap, because it's time to have a look down there now that 8 games gone and see who's hovering around that trap door. So I've chosen every single team that are starting quote-unquote poorly in my eyes. So anyone on 9 points in 8 games downwards. So we'll start off with the bottom side, Peter, and that's Metz. Are they doomed without an out-and-out goal scorer?
Well, you'd think so. If you've only scored 3 goals in 8 games, it doesn't exactly bode well. I wouldn't say they're doomed. Obviously, things are not good. They need more from Roux. Obviously, Rivier's been injured. Get hasn't been firing. He's been missing a lot of chances. And we've talked before about how they haven't really replaced Sarr and Diabate. But I do feel a little bit sorry for Hinchberger and Metz, because I think they've been a little bit unlucky, especially recently. They, of course, recently they've had a number of 1-0 defeats. The defeat to Nantes, they will feel they should have had a draw. I mean, there was that penalty farce where Nolan Roux steps up to take a penalty in the dying embers of the game, puts it away, referee blows a whistle for encroachment. And of course, encroachment is not something that is that readily enforced normally. But then once the retake is taken and Roux misses, encroachment is equally as bad, if not worse. I think Rich mentioned this actually last time, but these are the kind of things. I mean, against Troyes, they totally dominated the game. Samassa had another trademark sensational game in goal. Get missed another trademark chance. Troyes had 10 men for most of the game. So I think they're creating opportunities, and they're just not taking them. And obviously then that does go back in circles to the start point, which is goals. But I actually think, they've got Saint-Etienne next away, and I think it was reported that Hinchberger's got a couple of games to sort things out and pick up some points. But I think defensively they're sound. They do have one of the worst defensive records on paper, but if you take away the 5 goals they conceded against PSG, which were all conceded after a ludicrous red card, I thought they were excellent in that game, Mets, and they'll be thoroughly disappointed with how that game transpired with that ridiculous red card for Asu Okoto. But that means if you take those 5 goals out, they've only conceded 9, which is actually the joint 7th best defensive record in the league. So defensively, I don't think they're in as much difficulty as they are going forward. And I think if they do start to take chances, if they do get Roux becoming more consistent and get taking some chances that he seems to love to miss, then, we're looking at a different story. I mean, they did put 3 goals past Charleroi in a friendly the other day. So, there is hope. There is hope in the darkness, but you can't get away from what's in front of you and what the stats are saying. And they need to score goals. But I don't think it's as bad as it may first appear.
That's absolutely right, Peter. Search for those silver linings wherever you can find them. I think when you're near the bottom. And
optimistic.
And I'm looking at another team that's a bit like that, and that's Strasbourg. Really, they looked pretty decent against the Lille side that were completely abysmal. But we mentioned last week they can't score goals and they're not getting results. And that the game just before the international break against Dijon seemed like a really, really big game for them to try and maybe get a win under your belt. You've got some difficult games. They went a man down. They nicked a goal in the last minute. It's not really ideal, really. You start looking at the fixtures coming up. That you start looking at Marseille. You start looking at Nice, Angers in the next 3 weeks as well. That's not the easiest trio of games necessarily, and you start wondering if it will start spiraling. Although there's one glimmer of hope in there, and that's the goal scorer in that Dijon game, and that's Martin Terrier, who's been on a tear, excuse my turn of phrase on that, with the French under-21s. He scored a couple of goals recently, getting them back from being behind against I think was it Kazakhstan, Rich?
He got a hat-trick against Kazakhstan, and then a goal in the next qualifier, and then 2 tonight to turn
6
around.
and 3.
So he's the player they need to turn to. They've got him on loan from Lille. Very, very exciting young player. Has been gradually, I think, introduced to first team football with Strasbourg. They have to throw him into the deep end now.
Yeah.
He's shown with the under-21s that he can perform. He can score goals. He's got the creativity. He's got a couple of assists, I think, to go with those 6 goals for the under-21s. 8 equaliser against Dijon before the international break. He's going to have to be their go-to guy, certainly to get them through till at least January, because really the form has not been good enough. They've lost a couple of games which they might have expected to. The opening game against Lyon, against Monaco, they're losses that you can write off. What I don't think as a newly promoted side you can't write off is a home defeat to a fellow newly promoted side. And they lost a few weeks ago at home to Amiens. That's not excusable for a newly promoted side. That's a game that they will have had to take the full 3 points from. They've got a couple of tricky games coming up. Marseille at home, Nice away, but then there's a run of 3 games where, if they're to stay up, they're 3 games that they should be targeting at the very least. If I'm perfectly honest, 5, maybe even 7 points.
Yeah.
To Angers, away at Troyes, home to Rennes. They're all down there. They're all potential. It pains me to say this about Rennes, but at this moment in time, why not a potential relegation candidate as well? All three of those sides have had sort of various difficulties so far in this season, although Troyes are showing a little bit of form of late. But it's plain and simple for Strasbourg. They need to start scoring. And they need to start getting points, because it's they're very, very quickly falling into a pattern of defeats and rescuing last-minute draws against teams who they should be performing better against than other Dijon games. So I think the alarm bells have started ringing for Strasbourg already this early because they can't afford. We've seen too many teams recently in Ligue 1 fall into this trap of not winning, habit to get out of. I think you only have to ask Troyes the last time they were in Ligue 1 exactly how difficult a habit that can be. So they just need to get that win by any means necessary, and then look to build on that. So they really need to focus on their performance. I think they really need to look at, okay, they may not get any points out of their next 2 games, but look for some positive performance that they can then take into that run of games where they should be looking to get those points. Because, if we're still having this kind of conversation mid-November, you'd have to say it's looking very, very grim for Strasbourg.
Yeah, and another side that have looked pretty grim every time I've seen them, at least anyway, this season, is Lille. And they keep popping up on Friday nights, which is not ideal for me, really, because they've been awful at times. And Peter, that you look at the results, that game against Nantes looks like such a misnomer now. And yes, they're obviously a game behind because of that incident in Amiens last week. But is there anything to really get optimistic about Bielsa's side at the moment?
To put it bluntly, no.
Yeah.
They've got a huge game coming up this weekend against Troyes, and Troyes are in a decent bit of form. They've won back-to-back games. And at the moment, Lille look all over the place. Defensively, they are entirely unstable. It seems like Bielsa is his methods are not taking on as quickly as he would like. And they are stuck in that rut because obviously it's his project. This is his name. These are his players. I mean, they were pretty poor against Monaco. I mean, they started well against Amiens before, of course, later events ended the game. But the defeat to Guingamp was deserved. I mean, they did well to get a point off Bordeaux. Against Angers, they when at the end of August, I don't know how they managed to get away with a point. They gifted them so many opportunities, and that's been their issue defensively, especially defensively. I guess that's the way Bielsa likes to play. It's very much 190 miles an hour with pressing, but we haven't even seen that. That's the weird thing. It seems like the side appears dishevelled and exhausted after what you would expect to be some kind of excessive pressure. We haven't even seen that. So I think what underlines it is Nicolas Pepe up front. And he's not a forward. And the sale of de Préville to Bordeaux really does strike as concerning. And I wonder if there was more to it than just needing money, because the money wasn't supposed to be an issue for this project. And you're relying on Pepe up front, and he's useless in that position. This isn't his position. There are a lot of problems at Lille, and they've got to start picking up points. And the game in hand, well, that doesn't stand for anything. So,
yeah. Pepe up front reminds me of when I was a striker at 8 years old and I scored about 2 goals in that season. They were very, very lucky goals, I'll admit. He looks lost. He looks pointless. You might as well have a Sabutio player out there at the moment, really, to bounce the ball off. At least he might do something a little bit more than Pepe does, and that might be damning. But there were a lot of clubs looking at him at the summer, and I had never quite understood why. Rich, Dijon have actually got better in the last couple of weeks, in all honesty. They've picked up a couple of results after starting pretty direly, in all honesty. They're slowly picking things up. A win against Montpellier, draw against Lyon was very good, and they probably should have won against Strasbourg the other week as well. Are they starting to maybe find something about their team?
Yeah, I think it's important to note with Dijon, I think they've had quite a difficult start to the season in terms of the teams they've played. And they're opening, so after this weekend, they're opening 9 games that have already had to have faced Marseille, Monaco, Lyon, Saint-Etienne, and PSG. So actually, that's a pretty difficult, pretty tricky run of form to face. You look at the other matches. Well, they got a point at Rennes. they'd have taken that. I'm fairly certain. They won at home to Montpellier, job done. Narrow defeat at Caen, not ideal. And then we're unfortunate, I think, to have only come away with a point at Strasbourg. So I don't think the alarm bells are ringing Dijon quite as badly as the other teams that we've mentioned so far. But again, it's a case of, it goes back to the same argument I really made with Strasbourg. And to be honest, you can make it with any of these teams down here. It's making sure you're not falling into a habit. Okay, points at home to Strasbourg. It's better than a loss, but that should have been a win. And that they'll, it's a case of what ifs, isn't it? It's they're only fallen a goal behind to Caen. They can't afford. They can't afford to lose against fellow candidates to go down. So yeah, a game at the weekend at home to PSG. Okay, put in a good performance, but you're really looking at that game the week after away at Metz, potential huge repercussions for that game, and then of course they're home at Nantes in the round after. So there's a couple of games there, I think, where Nantes are on a decent run of form, but they're not playing great football. They're playing effective football, but they're not playing great football. There's two games there I think Dijon should be looking at 4 points from. So I think it's important that they get that win, isn't it? It's I've said it hundreds of times already on this podcast. It's making sure not to get in that habit. You've got to make sure the team, the squad, the crowd, the board, everyone remains positive. The minute that any one of those heads drop, you're in serious problems. So it's early days, yes, but the longer you go without that next win, those heads do start to drop. So Dijon are another one of those sides where they just need to look at that win, and by looking at that win, it needs to be against a fellow struggler at the bottom of the table.
The one thing I would say with Dijon is that they have scored goals, which is among the sides below them is a really key thing, it seems. They've found the net 10 times. Another side that scored goals is Rennes. And when you have goals in the team, there's potential. They've got all of their forwards have scored. And Saïd has settled relatively well. He hasn't pulled up any trees. Nobody really expected that. But Tavares has scored. Jano scored. So that they have goals, I think, is quite important. Defensively, it's a completely different story. But that's what got Dijon out of jail last season. Were the fact that they score goals, and you will, cliched again as it sounds, you will always stand a chance of staying up if you score more goals. So the fact that they kept that going means, you would probably say that there will certainly end up towards the end of this season being three worse teams than Dijon. But it's a tricky game to play. The whole, we'll just try and score more than you. I remember, it reminds me sort of the days when Blackpool were in the Premiership. Their tactics seem to be, okay, well, we'll just try and win. If we're going to concede 3, we'll just try and score 4. It's great to watch, but I'm fairly certain Dijon fans get very, very frustrated at times. So, goals will count for a lot, but they can't afford to be too sloppy at the back.
Yeah, and they're spread out quite nicely as well. I'm looking at Yambere's grabbed 1, Sleety scored, Jacket scored, Kwan's got 2. They've got goals a little bit here, there, and everywhere as well. They're not just relying on one person to bang a few in. And mentioning a couple of those, the Xhaka and Sleety especially, it's almost like another club around that bottom area would quite use those 2 players that used to play for them. Peter, Amiens is a side that we didn't really expect an enormous amount from this season, but they've been pretty decent in some games. They had a really rough start, in all honesty, and they've picked up a bit of momentum, at least before facing Marseille and tougher loss at Caen. They beat Nice 3-0, which is an impressive result on their own, and they're at least starting to grab a couple of goals. It seems like if they score, they'll win. If they don't score, they'll lose. That seems to be their method at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit. And you're right. And I don't think anyone really expected anything from them, but they have really stepped up to the plate. I think that the issue with Amiens, of course, is like Strasbourg, is the back-to-back promotions issue. Coming up so quickly, a lot of these squad players have played third division that's a huge setback from day one. But I think Adam mentioned this on a previous show. Adam White was talking about how well they've invested, and they have. Looking at their squad, Kakuta for one, it's been a really good addition. Gakpe's got experience. Traore's come in as another option, and they've looked quite good. There was some concerns, especially after Ndombele left. I mean, his first few games for Amiens were superb. He was the standout player, but they haven't looked like they've missed him too much, which is good. Very good for their prospects. I think their results have been good too. I mean, obviously the win against Strasbourg is huge. Away at Strasbourg is a big, big win for them. And then obviously the win over Nice as well. So you're looking ahead at their fixtures. Toulouse is a game they could win. They look extremely fragile at the moment. And I mean, if you're stripping your captain of his armband and giving it to his defensive partner, that doesn't bode well. Bordeaux will be a lot trickier. But yeah, they've adapted much better than others. But it's the same rules apply for Amiens as to everyone else. But yeah, I think going forward they look strong. They've invested very smartly, and they have a side with experience to counterbalance the remnants of the new promoted elements.
Yeah, and I really like Moussa Konate as well. I mentioned when they signed him that a number of clubs were looking at him in the past when he was scoring quite a few for FCC on, but then move never really materialised, and it looks like he's quite a nifty little buy as well. Rich, onto the team that you probably didn't really want to talk about, and that's your faithful Rennes. I mean, the start of September, we were positive they had a great win against Marseille. They were very unlucky, really, against Nice. Again, they pushed Saint-Etienne all the way. It was maybe Levy were pretty lucky to get a draw out of that. And then the Caen game happens. It's typical Rennes, isn't it?
It is. It's sort of 1.5 steps forwards, 4.5 steps back, it seems, with Rennes. One of, if not the most frustrating team to watch in Liga at the minute. Because on paper, that squad is a talented squad. It's a very talented squad, I think. Trying to not put too much of a bias on it. But Christian Gourcuff cannot. I think over the recent weeks, perhaps even tailing into the last season, I think it's become evident that he doesn't, despite having such a great reputation with young players, he seems to have just lost it a little, I think, now, to the point where I'm erring towards the group of fans who are calling for him to go. This Rennes team are, they've been underperforming for years. It's felt like this is bordering onto a very, very serious run of poor form that we can't afford to let go much further than this. Things have to change. This is not great. This is not what these how these players should be playing. Players are equally to blame. I can't pin everything on Gourcuff, but the way I think he sets up the team, this persistence on Ben Sebaini having a part to play at left back, is frustrating beyond belief. Sarr to injury for a few weeks, picked up in the draw at Saint-Etienne. There's a little bit of not a little bit. There's actually quite a lot of doom and gloom growing around in at the club. I know talks are held between the president and some of the senior players and the biggest fan group over the last couple of days to try and sort of placate fears and try and calm things down, I suppose, because there is a growing call for Gourcuff to be fired. I know after the game against the defeat at home to Caen, quite a large group of supporters stayed behind, sort of calling for Gourcuff to go. I know some senior players met with those fans again to try and calm them down, to reason with them, explain the situation. But it's almost come to the point now where the club can't allow it to go on for much longer. You know, there's underperforming, and then there's this level of performance, which is, you know, several stages below what Rennes fans have come to sadly expect with their team. It's not good. There's you know, the performance against Marseille was great, but it was slightly fortunate in so much as they caught Marseille in one of those horror show performances at the Velodrome. Aside from that, there's really not been a great deal of positivity, which is very, very frustrating, because the signings they made in the summer were really positive signings. I was really, really anticipating the start of this season. You know, Ismail Assar was such an exciting player last season. You know, to see the likes of him, Feitou Mouassa, Hamari Traore, they're all really exciting players, but under this Gourcuff system, they're just not flourishing. So, unfortunately for Gourcuff, as great a servant as he's been to French football, I think the time has come for him to move on.
Yeah, I can't really agree any less with you, really, Rich. Let's quickly turbo through the last three teams, and that's Toulouse, Montpellier, and Angers. So I'll give us one each. So I'll start with you, Peter, and I'll give you Toulouse. Discomfort in the camp, it seems like now, with Duprat falling out with one of his key players, really, in Julien, and a team that, especially against Marseille, I mean, Duprat supposedly ripped into them after that game, but deservedly so, really, in that kind of very subpar display, wasn't it?
Yeah, they've been underperforming for a while now, and it's not surprising that Duprat has come to blows with some of his players. He has that sort of that personality, that firebrand aspect to him. It doesn't help that you're falling out with your captain, and it doesn't help that they're at your centre halves, and it doesn't help that they're currently the position that's struggling the most. Quite clearly, defence is their main issue. I feel like up front there are options. They haven't been helped by injuries as well. They've been without Dermaz, who's shown glimpses of quality very recently, and Gradle. You could do with him back as well, just to mix things up a bit. But you know, there are some good players in there. Delort above all. Somalia looks okay on that side. Lafont is a good keeper, but he's been exposed quite a few times this season. I mean, we look at the results and their wins. The win against Rennes was gifted, courtesy of Ben Spaini and co, as Rich has just outlined. There was 2 penalties in that game, I think, if I remember rightly. The positive is that they managed to get a point off Guingamp after a run of 3 games without a goal, which is positive, and it shows a reaction after the Duprat hairdryer treatment against OM. But looking forward again, they've got some big games coming up where they'll need to start picking up some points, because the squad they've got, they should be doing better than they are. They've got Amiens next, and they should really be winning that game. Amiens, Angers, and then Saint-Etienne. So they're games they will expect to be picking up points from. And 8 points from 8 games is not good enough for Toulouse. But yeah, I think they defensively is where their issues lie. Defensively is where they've really got to hammer home and tighten the ship, because all of the sides around the bottom don't tend to have an issue with conceding goals. So it's usually the other end that's the issue. So that's something they will want to address quickly. And they've got Issa Diop, who's now been given the captaincy. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that. He is an excellent player. He has the potential to be an excellent player. And hopefully the pressure that comes with captaincy won't send him one way. Well, hopefully it'll do what it has done to Fekir at Lyon and spur him on and I hope it helps to tighten the ship, as I trip over more words. But yeah, Toulouse, defensively is where their issues lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich, quickly on Montpellier, it's got better at the last couple of weeks with a couple of good draws, but you look at the results beforehand and you still feel like they need to pick up better points against these teams around them.
Absolutely. I think a couple of really, really good performances may mask some of those issues. I think holding PSG to a 0-0 draw is fantastic, no matter what side you are in the league, let alone a side who've sort of struggled in the last couple of seasons like Montpellier have, and then to draw away at the champions, only 1-1 against Monaco. 2 really good performances, as was the performance before those winning 1-0 away at Troyes, you know. I think what we were saying before about Toulouse and potential defensive issues there, it seems to be not the case. It seems to be the opposite way around for Montpellier. Actually, defensively, they look pretty solid, which is crazy to think. You know, I think in the last 4 games they've only conceded 2 goals, considering 2 of those games against PSG and Monaco. And it seems equally as crazy that, you know, you're allocating a lot of that praise to Vitorino Hilton. Still, he's still going at 40 years old. You know, he's flanked by Congre. They brought Pedro Mendes in from Rennes, who seems a rejuvenated player, seems to have settled in really well. So really for Montpellier, it's going to be goals that are an issue. You know, they still have a squad that have the likes of Kevin Berrigo in it. They still have the likes of, God bless him, love him as a player, but Suleiman Kamara. Okay, he popped up with the late equaliser against Monaco, but they need someone fresh. They brought Giovanni Sio in, also from Rennes in the summer. He's not that fresh striker they need. They need to look at someone exciting. They lost Steve Mounier in the summer. It's that kind of player they need to look at bringing back. I was hoping that after such a long injury that Casimir Ninga was going to be that player. He still seems to be finding his feet. So I think come January, that's certainly, I think, where the club will need to look at, is bringing in some exciting, younger, more vibrant attackers, because if not, they surely can't rely on a 40-year-old centre-back for the rest of the season.
No, absolutely. And I'll take Angers, who we mentioned a couple of weeks ago. It might have been on the preview show, that they really rise to the occasion against these big sides, but they sometimes also limit themselves against the smaller teams. For example, when they lost to Metz earlier this season, and the amount of draws they've had is almost staggering. It's a very important month, I think, this one in October, where they face Caen at the weekend. They have Toulouse the weekend after that, and Strasbourg as well away. Those 3 games are really, really important for them to just get a win under their belts. I think if they can keep playing, or at least not rise to the occasion on a poor scale, if you understand my drift, where they sort of play under themselves against teams that they perceive at least as being weaker or on their level. If they can get a win at Caen, I think that pushes them away from it, and it might just give them the confidence they need to sort of finally pull away and be that mid-table side, or even potentially European side that we probably expect from a club that have a number of exciting players in their 11. I think Angelo Fulgini's been an excellent signing. I think Enzo Crivelli, if he can just sort of get out of his own way, it seems like sometimes, and hit the form he can do. Carl Toko Ekambi has been absolutely excellent again. So they just need to finally get a good win under their belts. I know obviously they beat Angers on the second week of the season, but one more win now will probably push them out of this mire they find them in on 9 points at the moment. But they don't look like a team that will be struggling really for much longer. Let's quickly talk about that, because surprisingly we're filling this international break, aren't we? The Ballon d'Or list came out this evening. And there's a number of players on it, including 7 altogether that are either French or in Ligue 1, and that list includes, for the French side, Antoine Griezmann, N'Golo Kante, Karim Benzema, and Kylian Mbappe, who's obviously also in Ligue 1, as well as Neymar, Cavani, and Radamel Falcao. It's impressive to see quite a fair number of names from Ligue 1, although obviously Neymar's relatively recent on that list. Rich, that what I wanted to pull up first of all is it's, even though it's 4 names, it feels like a steady improvement, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think actually you could probably have added what should have been. I think Ousmane Dembele can count himself very, very unlucky not to have been included on this list. I thought over the last 12 months, he's been terrific. He obviously sealed that mega money move to Barcelona. Unfortunate that he's picked up an injury that's going to keep him out for a few months. But it's great to see. You know, I know a lot of people have thrown a little bit of doubt on this, saying, well, you know, it's a France Football Magazine, award. There should be French players. Well, that's not necessarily how it goes. You know, this is an award that has been absolutely dominated by only 2 players, and there's not been even a look in from a third player really over the last few years, no matter how not quite as good the likes of Ronaldo and Messi seem to play. So it's great to see the likes of the players there. It's great to see players like N'Golo Kante. I know he obviously got a lot of praise last season, won countless Player of the Year awards, but the pitch that still seems to go quite underappreciated. They are crucial roles that they're playing. And yeah, of course, players who score the goals, have all the flashy skills, will always going to get more column inches. But it's great to see that kind of player rewarded with that, because he has been terrific now for 2 and a bit seasons. And to be perfectly honest, with the moves that I know certain players made this summer, I think we can certainly look on this as the start of a, next year there should be more, I think, either French-based or French players on it. I think Bakayoko has had a terrific start to his Chelsea career, for example. So there's going to be more to come, I think, over the years, but it's a strong start for this sort of new era, if you like, of French football.
And it's great to see a number of French players on that list as well, because of obviously the club's going through. Griezmann obviously was pretty close last year, and the amount of players that, although Benzema's maybe a question mark, it's maybe a little bit cheeky to put him on that list. I don't think he's quite at that level anymore. Mbappe, it's great to see him on that list, but is it a bit too soon? It's always tough on these kind of lists. They are obviously subjective, but I think the one that we want to talk about, Peter, in this, is the man who really wants that award from who plays in France, and that's Neymar. Is this his year?
Potentially. The last year, of course, was dominated had to be Cristiano Ronaldo with Portugal and his phenomenal form. He still maintained that form. Messi's star hasn't dimmed, but it's not shining as brightly. I guess that still means it dims. But I think what Neymar's done is he's put himself on the map, both on the field and off it. And he is now far more in the consciousness of everyone in European football. Not that he wasn't before, but his move to PSG was based around being centre stage at the club, and he certainly is that now. And he has been exceptional since he's come to France. And you can have your points about, it's Liga, it's this, it's that, but he has looked a different player. As being in those first few games, especially being the focal point, seems to bring out another level of talent, of importance, and he's risen to that. I mean, we can talk about off-field things separately, but on the field, he's been exceptional. I think nothing more defines that than his free kick against Bordeaux that set off a chain of events of superb attacking play from PSG. So does he have a chance? Yes. Yeah, I do think he has a chance. But you never know with these awards. I don't particularly like these kind of awards because, as Rich was saying, they tend to be so skewed to forwards. And first of all, football is a team game anyway, and you can talk about that, fine. But if you have to have individual rewards, you've got to look at it from a broader perspective of the game and how players affect teams. And of course, we've had Ronaldo and Messi have been exceptional talents. I do accept that, but I think one obviously with Kante was when he was overlooked for PFA Player of the Year for Mahrez, and Mahrez was exceptional. But for me, Kante was the man that made him tick, and you saw that the following season after he left. So I think I'm glad that there are more names on that list who are not your goal scorers. But I think one omission for me was Casemiro. I think he has been absolutely essential for Real Madrid and their dominance. But again, he's not a glamour player. So who these awards are tailored for. But yes, I think Neymar does have a chance. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, Neymar, he does.
No, that's fine. Another debate for another day, really. The single awards in a team game. I've never really understand it. I would have preferred something maybe similar-ish to what they have in the NFL of an offensive player and a defensive player, although they still pick an MVP. So where am I saying in that? Never mind. Let's quickly dive into some users' questions because we've had a fair good ones this week. I've got 6 for you, so one question, one person, so I'll direct it at someone. So I'll start with you, Rich, and this one's from Tony Montolivo. Do you think Jardim is regretting staying at Monaco this summer?
No, No, I don't think so. I think I think he probably knew all along that something like what we saw in the summer was going to happen. I think what he can see from that is it's actually quite an exciting project. If you're willing to buy into it as a coach, that your best players will come and go, relatively quickly, but there will be a high turnover of quality players. If you're willing to buy into that, then it's a great project to be part of. At the minute, it seems like Jardim has. They've sold a lot of players, but they've brought in a lot of cash and therefore have brought in some good players as well. So, if he's part of that, can understand how that project will work in the short, mid and long term, then, it seems that he has. So, no, I don't think he has any regrets at all.
No, and hopefully he'll still have an option open for me to become his protege at one point. We never know. Next one. So it's at Dom Banks 2, and this one's for you, Peter. With there being a clear oversaturation of amazing French eligible talents, do you think France will start calling up some of these players to avoid them being poached by other eligible countries?
It's a very interesting one. I mean, it's definitely an issue that affects France more than most. No, because I just don't think it's possible with the current squad. I think the squad is so exceptionally talented that calling up players a la Wilfried Zaha and I remember Danny Welbeck when he made his debut for England about his links with Ghana. I don't think you will see those kind of call-ups. Of course, this is Didier Deschamps, so he not only looks at your talent and form, but whether you're useful in his own way and in his own thinking. So, because obviously with age groups, it doesn't matter until the national team. So I think you'll see a lot of French talent going to countries of their grandparents' background or parents' background for the nations they're eligible for because of the amount of talent they have. And I don't think France will try and monopolise that by any stretch of the imagination because they don't need to, for one.
I think there is a growing group of younger players who are willing to, sort of write off a career with the France squad at an early age. You look at the likes very quickly. You look at Adam Ounas, you look at Yoris Gnagnon, Amin Harit. Although not confirmed yet, you've got the Hernandezes, Hernandai, is that how you say a plural of the Hernandez brothers? And there's still question marks over Laporte. I think he only played a friendly game. I think he still technically could play for Spain. So I think what you'll see is, certainly I think with those first couple of names I mentioned, is at a younger age, they're willing to say, you know what, this competitive French squad is not for me. I'd rather get guaranteed national game time with, my grandparents were born.
Yeah, it does seem to be the growing trend, doesn't it? I know I remember Harit only a couple of weeks ago as well. A surprising one there. One from at Arian H 1999, Richard. Do you think it was a mistake for PSG to loan out Krychowiak, knowing that they lacked a defensive midfielder?
I don't think. I personally think it was. Yes, I don't think PSG do. He barely played when he was there. They've had ample opportunity to sign a defensive midfielder. They seem to put all their eggs into the Fabinho basket. It was blindingly obvious they needed cover in that position. It was also quite clear, I think, that Monaco, weren't going to let PSG snap Mbappe and Fabinho. So, I think that was quite obvious from relatively early on in the transfer window, certainly as their interest in Mbappe grew. They had the time, they have the resource to recruit. They didn't. Still let Krychowiak go. So for me, they're not going to regret that in one bit.
Yeah, can't really disagree with that one, I don't think. Peter, this one is from Dr. Mantis Toboggan, and I thoroughly salute being able to make a It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference on this show. Do you think that Bielsa project will be blown up by Lille before the winter break, or that he might walk out with them like he did at OM because it's not going too well for them so far?
Oh, well, arguably it's already exploded. It's just that it's just being contained in a sort of North Korean bunker under the ground. Yeah, implosion. Yeah, it's late. Do I think Bielsa will hang around for a little longer? Absolutely, because everything is. It's just using the same metaphor that Rich did. All the eggs are in his basket. Everything has been thrown at him. The way the squad has been assembled is Bielsa. What will it take to release him? I think if they just continue to perform abjectly like they have done, and potentially Christmas, I think by Christmas. But I think they may give him that long, just because of how much investment they've made on the back of him. So I don't know. The omens are not good by any stretch of the imagination, and any other football side, I think he'd be out the door by now.
Yeah, I think he's trying to find where the exit door might be. Someone's maybe painted it on at the Lille training ground, trying to keep him in as long as they can. Rich, this one's from Vic Chernetsky. Sorry if I've almost butchered that. Other than goalkeeping issues, what else has contributed to Nice's stumbling start compared to last season?
It's difficult to put a finger on it. I think there have been, as was asked as mentioned in the question, aside from goalkeeping, there have been defensive errors. I don't think Dante, for example, has looked that we saw last season. I don't know. There just seems a little bit more frailty to this side. A bit of, it's silly to say this with a team with Balotelli in it, but a little bit of lack of self-belief. They were very gung-ho last season. Bravado was almost the operative word for the way that they played. There was no fear, really entertaining to watch. It seems like, they've realised that one or two teams have caught on to their tactics, have therefore nullified it, and they've gone into their shell a little bit. So I think what Favre has to do is try and get that attitude that they had last season back, iron out those defensive mistakes. I can't say I've been the world's biggest Cardinal fan over the last couple of seasons. I'd almost put him in the sort of, when I say put him in the Ruffier category, I mean that as in, there's a mistake in him in nearly every game, as well as a couple of world-class saves. So there's work to be done. But they have the players, they have the coach, they have the resources to put things right, because it's a mental thing. As Favre has acknowledged that, can work on that behind the scenes, Nice will get back to form.
Yeah, and I think I'll take the last one from OL USA. They say, do you think OL can turn it around and get things in the right direction? I absolutely think they can. They've got a terrific squad of players. I really like their midfield, and Ndombele has been great. Toussaint, they both played for the under-21s as well tonight, which is great to see. They've got a great front line, although I'm still frustrated by Memphis Depay. They need to get rid of Bruno Genesio, though. If they want to make Champions League football, they need to bin him sooner rather than later. Get another man in who has more tactical flexibility, a bit more nous about him, that can really rough this team into shape. Because, in all honesty, on paper, I think they should be third. But they might miss out on it if they keep him in charge, really. Sorry about that for the US fans of OL, at least anyway. That's all that we have time for this evening. Sorry for the late finish. My thanks to Peter, Rich, and all of you listening at home. Join us for the preview show that will also be slightly later this week on Thursday at 10:30. And the main show will be back at the usual time in the same place next week. A bientôt and goodbye.